everyone, welcome to the channel, and in this video we are going to talk about the AWS interview questions. So till the time we have talked about the different AWS services, the different concepts of the AWS EC2, AWS BPC, AWS time role policy, and many more stuffs we have talked about. In details, we have talked about the EC2 EIP, load balancer, auto scaling group, launch template, target groups, path-based routing, and in terms of BPC, we have talked about the BPC pairing, transit gateway, BPC endpoint, and so many things. In this video, we are going to talk about this AWS interview questions, which are the second part of the about interview questions specific to AWS. So, in continuation to all this, let's start with the first question. When should we use NACL and security group? So before talking about when should we use NACL and security group, we should understand where all these get applied. So NACL, if you have watched out the videos what I have uploaded on the channel, NACL applies on the subnet level, while your security groups applies on the instance level. Correct. So if you see over here, NACL works on the subnet level. You can see this is the VPC, this is the NACL which works on the subnet level, and security group works on the EC2 instances. Correct. So whenever the request is comes to your VPC, that goes from if there is internet, that goes to the NACL. From NACL it gets entry in the subnet, and from this after that it gets in the security group. Once security group verifies, then your request goes to the EC2 level. Correct. So if you have to apply any rule on the subnet level, that this kind of request can come, this kind of request can go outside, then you should NSCL. If you want to restrict or apply or deny kind of thing on the EC2 level, on the resource level itself, correct, then you can apply the security group. So that comes as your first answer to the first question, when should we use NSCL and security group. Second question, like the 12th question, what is the default properties of NACL and security group? So the default properties of NACL and security group is NACL is statelets. That means whatever the request is coming inside the subnet, you have to explicitly mention that this request should go outside as well. That means it does not remember any statelets, and by default it allows all the requests. That means it does not check for anything. By default it allows anything, but if you have to explicitly mention anything, then you will have to mention it in inbound and outbound both, if you want to allow the same thing as well. While the security group is stateful, that means whatever you define in the inbound, it remembers all those things to go outside as well. Correct. So if you see, by default a security group deny all inbound traffic and allow all outbound traffic. Correct. Then so that is the thing over here. And for the comparison part, let's go here. Security group and NACL is, can see, operates at EC2 instance or ENI level, while NACL operates at subnet level. Security group only allow rules it supports, while NACL supports both allow and deny. That means from the NACL you can say that this kind of request should be allowed, this kind of request should be denied at your subnet level. Correct. Then all rules are evaluated before making a decision to the for the security group, and for NACL rules are evaluated in the order lower to higher. That means if there are three rules, so for the security group all the three rules will be evaluated at one time, while the for the NACL the first rule will be checked, and whatever the result will be there, that will be applied. After that second and third will be checked, so it goes on the one by one, while the security group is stateful and NACL is stateless. That we can see. 13th question is what is VPC, and then 14th question is how many types of subnet you have created. So let's go with the what is VPC. So VPC, here we have talked about in the beginning of the VPC slide. So let me go over here, Amazon VPC. Yes. So you can see VPC stands for Virtual Private Cloud, which is a secure isolated private cloud that is hosted within a public cloud. VPC allow organizations sorry VPC allow organizations to use public cloud resource while still being benefiting privacy of a private cloud. So if you have watched out the video, what I have covered to launch VPC, so you can better understand what is the VPC, how VPC came into the picture, what is the use cases. But here just a simple example that VPC stands for virtual private cloud, and it's a private area within the public cloud where you can apply your own rules, where you can launch your own resources, you can control all these things according to yourself. So virtual private cloud is nothing but a smaller space within the public cloud where you can play according to yourself. Correct. Then how many types of subnets you have created? So in general there are two kind of subnets, private and public one. So if the subnet what you have launched, and that subnet will be of course part of route table, if that route table will be having the internet gateway associated with it, then that subnet which is the part of that route table will become your uh, public subnet. While if the route table does not have that internet gateway associated with that, that becomes your private subnet. So if you see here, this is public subnet, this is private subnet. Why? This public subnet is having the access to 000 internet gateway, correct? While this is a private subnet, private subnet does not have the access to 00 with the internet gateway, correct? Here you can see, so it is having the access of the NAT. Through the NAT it can go to the internet, correct? NAT will be there in the route table of the private subnet, and then this NAT gateway is associated in the public subnet, and then from the public subnet it can go to the internet. So this is the way how private subnet can communicate to the internet. So the subnet which is the part which is associated as the route table, and that route table is having the direct access of the internet, that subnet will be public. And the subnet which is the for which the route table is not having the access to the internet directly, that will be a private subnet. So that's the difference between these two, and there are mainly these two kind of subnets. You can create other subnets as well with the different names, database subnet or transit gateway subnets, anything, but these are the basic features. How do you launch a public EC2 machine? To launch a public EC2 machine, you will have to create a VPC, you will have to create a subnet, you will have to create a route table. In the route table, you will have to mention your internet gateway. So for mentioning internet gateway, you will have to create one internet gateway. That internet gateway should be attached with the VPC, correct? And then you can mention it in the route table. In the same route table, you can associate your subnet, and then in this particular subnet, you can create your first EC2 machine, and that will be your public EC2 machine. As you can see from here as well, this is a kind of EC2. This EC2 is launched in a subnet. This subnet is a public subnet, as you can see here as well. And why this is public subnet? Because the route table which is associated with it, it is having the access to the internet. So this is how you can launch your public EC2 machine. Then can we change the private IP address of EC2 machine? No. If you launch your public EC2 machine or any EC2 machine, the private IP address of that EC2 instance cannot be changed. If you are launching the public one, public IP address can be changed once it starts again after the stopping, correct? If you stop and start, public IP can get changed, but private IP will remain the same. So this cannot be changed. Question number 17, how to connect AWS S3 bucket from AWS EC2 machine? So there are various ways to connect this S3 bucket with the EC2 machine. So there is one way that you create your AWS IAM role and policy, and that you attach with your EC2, and then you can access your this one. You can access your S3 bucket, correct? So there are multiple ways that we have talked. We had created public EC2 machine, then associated internet gateway with that. We created config file to get credentials. So on EC2 machine, you can run AWS configure command, and there you can pass secret key, access key, and with the help of that, it will be having the permission. Then you can run the AWS S3 ls command, and it will be able to communicate with the S3. The alternative was that you attach the IAM role and policy. If your EC2 machine is private, then you can use the VPC endpoint as well, and you can directly create VPC endpoint that will help you to establish the communication between EC2 to S3. If you are not sure how these things work, our detailed video on all these topics, how to create VPC endpoint, how you can use this first and second options, all these detailed videos are available on the channel that you can watch out, and you will be able to understand in more details. The question number is 18th. how to establish the communication between two VPC. To establish the communication between two VPC, there is a concept of VPC peering. Here you can see from the diagram, if there is a VPC A, VPC B, then you can establish the communication between these two VPC. Correct. How to establish the VPC peering? You can watch out the video. There you will be understand in details. Other than this VPC peering, there is a concept of transit gateway as well. Transit gateway can be utilized to establish the communication between multiple VPC. Correct. Now, when to use VPC peering and transit gateway? That's the another question. So if you have two VPC, VPC peering will be fine. As soon as the number of VPC grow to establish the communication, VPC peering becomes more complex and transit gateway becomes more helpful for you. Correct. As you can see, transit gateway is there to establish the multiple communication with the single hub and multiple attachments to the different VPC. But in the VPC peering, you have to establish the communication from one to one, from this VPC to this VPC to this, then from here to there. So it's the multi complex. VPC peering gets complex according to the increasing number of size, while the transit gateway gives you the one connection per VPC. Correct. How both of these are much helpful, that you can understand from the videos that I have already created on the channel. For this one, I also you can watch out the video. Then last question, when AWS service can be, which AWS service can be utilized for data storage in organized way like row and column. So for that, this one you can use this AWS RDS service. There you can create multiple RDS instances to store your data in table format like row and column, and that will be helpful and it will be easy to manage for you. So in this particular video, I wanted to talk about all these things, and in next video we'll be talking more AWS interview questions and other tech stacks interview questions. Till the time, thank you, stay tuned and subscribe to the channel. That will be helpful for me as well to upload the newer content. Thank you. Welcome to my channel, and here we are going to discuss about the AWS interview questions, and that is our part 3. So earlier I have covered this part 1, part 2, and in this video we are going to talk about part 3. So these are the interview questions which are being asked generally, and these are the real questions as well which I have faced and I even used to ask when I interview someone. So you can focus on all these questions, and let's go with the explanation of these questions as well. So the first question comes as, how can we access S3 bucket from EC2? So to do this, there are multiple options. If you have gone through these slides and PPT what I have covered on my channel. So if you are not aware, I have covered the complete tutorial before these interview questions, and meanwhile I used to create the interview questions as well. So I have talked about the AWS cloud in much details. I have also talked about the AWS EC2 instance and the different properties of the EC2 like user data, elastic IP address, or your different load balancer, auto scaling group, then your target groups, the launch template, and load balancers. Then I have talked about the AWS IAM roles, users policy, and all these things. And even I have talked about the AWS BPC, net gateway, internet gateway, BPC transit gateway setup, then your BPC endpoint, BPC peering. We have also talked about the S3 buckets and so on. More topics on the AWS cloud. Correct. Here we have been asked that how can you set up the access from EC2 to S3. Correct. So the question is very simple. You have to establish the connection from EC2 to S3. That means you have to grant the access as well. So what you will do, if your EC2, that is your server, is in public subnet, correct? That means your EC2 is a public EC2 instance. It is having the public IP address as well. So you have to do a simple thing. You just have to create one IAM role. To this IAM role, you will create certain policy which will have the access of S3, and this IAM role will be attached to your EC2 instance, correct? You will get into the actions of the EC2, then you will do the settings, and within the setting modify this settings, and you will attach this IAM role to the EC2 instance. Now your EC2 instance will have the access to S3 bucket, correct? And then if you run AWS CLI commands on your server, it will access the S3 bucket and it will perform all the operations whatever you want, correct? So that's the simple way to connect your public EC2 machine to the S3. Second question comes as what is trust relationship and policy. For that, let's move to moves here, and here we have talked about this IAM role and policy, correct? Then that was the question. What is the difference between role? Sorry, what was the question? The trust relationship and the policy. So for that, let's see here. So these are the AWS IAM policy, correct? As you can see, these are some custom managed policy as well, and few are of the AWS managed policy as well. So these policies which you can see here, it is already written AWS managed policy, correct? So these are already defined by the AWS cloud itself. While if you want to create your own policy, like you want to exclude some of the permission, you only want to perform the get kind of operation, you don't want the modify, delete those kind of permissions, so you can create your inline policy that will be called your customer managed policy. So these are the policy, and let's talk about the trust relationship as well here, correct? So this is the policy, you can see, and here it goes as a trust relationship. So what is the thing here? Whatever the things you will define in this trust relationship, just suppose that I'm defining a particular role here, correct? So you can see the in the AWS AR and AWS IAM, and certain role is defined over here. So what we are telling that through this AWS IAM role, which is mentioned over here, the Manish role, you can see, and whatever the permission is attached to this role, these all actions can be performed through these roles, correct? This one Manish role is a different role. You can suppose just like a human being A. These two roles are, you can suppose like human being B and C. Now if these are mentioned, these A, B and C are mentioned in trust relationship, that means you are telling that B and C can perform the operations on the A using this role, whatever the permissions are listed over here, correct? So on all those services you can perform the action. So this is the trust relationship, and policy is very simple. What are all the policies are attached to this role, so those kind of actions can be performed. Who can perform the action? Those who are mentioned in the trust relationship. So together with this particular role, this role can perform the actions, and even you can perform the actions from this role as well. So this is the difference between your trust relationship and the policy. Third question comes as, how will EC2 connect to S3 without internet? So this is kind of replica to your 21st question, but a little bit change, correct? A twist kind of thing, you can say. In first questions we considered our EC2 to be a public one. In third question we are considering that now our EC2 is not a public one. That means it is a private one. So for that you don't have to even attach the internet, so you won't be attaching the net gateway, correct? So if you don't have to attach the net gateway, so what you will do, you will jump to this new topic, and here we talked about the VPC endpoint, correct? So let me go there, and here we will be talking about the VPC endpoint. So through the VPC endpoint, you will be able to connect your private EC2 instance. One way was that you do have the access when it is in the public subnet, you directly connect it with your S3 bucket. If you have a private EC2 instance, you can attach the net, and then net will have the access to internet, and then you can attach. But you don't have to follow this path because you don't have to access the internet, correct? So for that, there is another way that is called as a VPC endpoint. VPC endpoint will directly connect your can directly establish the connection from S3 to the EC2, correct? So this way you can connect your private EC2 instance to the S3 bucket, correct? So that's the simple answer for your third question, how will EC2 connect to S3 without internet? 24th question, how to handle the secret in AWS? To handle the secret in AWS, there is a different service that is called as your AWS Secret Manager, and with the help of that AWS Secret Manager, you can store all the credentials. Either it might be your database related credential, or it might be your API token, or any kind of credentials or secret, whatever you want to store. That all those things you can store over here, correct? Even you can rotate the credentials if there is a security concern, obviously, correct? For the production databases, or for any other things, you can even rotate using the lambda function. So this is the service you can consider for handling the secret. 25th question is, suppose you have a large archive data and this needs to be deleted when it gets 1 year older. What action will you take to store this? So two topics out of S3 is combined over here. That first questions comes like when we talk about the archival data, that means we are focusing on the different storage class of the S3. And then even if we want to delete this data after 1 year, so we are considering the lifecycle management here as well. So let's move to the S3, And in S3, if you see earlier while covering the tutorial, I have already covered all these things. And if you are not aware, you can hit on the subscribe button, and with the help of that, you will get the notification of every content which I used to upload, and you will really enjoy the content as well. And you will start learning the DevOps. You will be completely uh, I will see that you will be feel that it's a kind of your hands-on on the service edge, correct? So let's talk about the storage class. So these are the storage class which can be utilized to store your data. When we talk about the archival, if you see the question, it is saying that you do have the archive data and it needs to be deleted after 1 year, correct? So for that, you will store all this data in S3 Glacier Deep Archive, which will have a low cost in comparison to the S3 standard and other storage classes. So you will store your data in S3 Glacier Deep Archive, and once you are done with that, you can go with your life cycle rules, correct? You can create life cycle rules. If you are not aware, you can watch out the videos what I have already created on life cycle rules, on the replication rules. In the life cycle rules, you can create the rules which will say that your data will move from S3 Glacier Deep Archive to deletion after certain number of days. So there you can create the rule which will say that earlier whenever the data will be uploaded to S3 bucket, it will directly move to archive S3 archival, and after 365 days it will get deleted, correct? So those kind of rule you can configure over here for the 25th number of question. Next question is 26th. Suppose there are two S3 buckets and they need to share the data to each other. What will you do? So this question comes as your the general question. What is being asked, that you can say that you have to establish the cross communication between the S3 buckets. Either it may be in a same account or a different account, same region or different region. What you will have to do, you will have to create a different role in a different account, and that role ARN needs to be passed in AWS S3 bucket policy, correct? In the first bucket. So with the help of this bucket policy and the permissions, you can grant access from one S3 bucket to another bucket. Next question, what are the difference between load balancer and why do we need them? So load balancers are basically needed for routing the traffic, and when it comes that what are the difference between these two? So for that we will understand it from the diagram over here, I think. Yeah, so there are two kind of load balancers mainly, and the third one is also there, but we will be talking about these two, which are the famous one: application load balancer and the network load balancer. Pointers you can read from here, and let's directly move to the use case. Web applications requiring advanced routing, microservice or service-less architecture, correct? So these this application load balancer can be utilized when you do have web applications. You do have e-commerce platform, you do have a certain websites, correct, for organizing the events and other things. If you require the real-time data streaming or the IoT related things or gaming related things, for that you can use the network load balancer, where you need a high throughput on the network side, correct, high performance on the network side. For that you can use this network load balancer. So that's the simple answer for your 27th question. And for the next, what is the meaning of HGM role in IAM? HGM role is nothing but just like the trust relationship. You assume a different role, correct? You have a role A, you do have a role B. To role A, you say that B can assume you. That means B can access you, and through the when it will access you, that means it will be having all the power what you have, correct? So B will be having all the powers what A have, and it can perform those actions. So to B, you are not directly getting delivering all the permissions, but you are passing a tunnel kind of thing. You are going through the A and then you are performing the action. So those kind of things can be set up through the HGM rule. That HGM rule ARN can be passed in the trust relationship, just like the similar way what we have talked earlier when we were talking about the AWS IAM role and policy here. So yeah, I talked about here. So in the trust relationship, you can mention the different role ARN and that will be trusted. What is the usage of subnet? The subnet. Subnet is nothing but it's you can say logical separation of your networking part, correct? So you do have a VPC. Within the VPC, there are multiple subnets can be created, and you can create the public subnet, you can create the private subnet, you can control the security groups for those, you can create control the NSCLs for these, and your different resources can lie in the public subnet or private subnet. So it's just a logical separation of IP addresses within this VPC, correct? That's the simple difference, the use case of the subnets. Then a last question: what is the way to pre-install the required software on your server before it comes up in running state? So this questions comes from your EC2 instance, and that is related to your AWS user data. So when we talk about the AWS user data, we say that with the help of this user data, you can pre-install all the softwares which are required. So this is the example. If you have to install software on your EC2 machine, like you have to enable your install your Docker, you have to install Jenkins, you have to install your Python, Java, or any kind of software or any directory or files you have to create on your server before it comes up, correct? So all those installation you can write in your EC2 user data, and that will run. Meanwhile, your EC2 instance is getting logged. That means whenever your EC2 instance will be available and it will be in running state, it will have all the software installed over this, correct? So this way you can answer to all these questions which will come in your DevOps interview or the cloud interview or the platform interview or for the SRE interview or even for the development. So this is the way how you can answer all these questions. So in this video I wanted to talk about all these things, and let's meet in the next video. Till the time, thank you, bye bye.